I don't know what possessed me to download the Tor browser and explore the dark corners of the internet. Maybe it was curiosity, or perhaps boredom, but whatever it was, I can't deny that I felt a chill run down my spine as I clicked on the link for the live stream. The broadcast was grainy and pixelated, but I could make out a few shapes in the background. It looked like a backyard, with a wooden fence and a few trees beyond it. I frowned, confused. Why would anyone want to stream footage from their backyard on the dark web? I was about to click away when something caught my eye. A flicker of movement, just at the edge of the screen. I leaned in closer, straining to see what it was. And that's when I saw her. A woman, dressed in a white sundress, was standing motionless by the fence. Her eyes were wide and staring, fixed on something off camera. I couldn't see her face clearly, but something about her expression made my skin crawl. I glanced at the chat window, expecting to see comments from other viewers, but the stream was deserted. It was just me and the woman in the backyard. I felt a twinge of unease, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. Suddenly, the woman's head snapped to the side, and she began to run. I could hear the sound of her footsteps, pounding against the grass. She moved with a desperate urgency, as if she were being chased. I watched in horror as she stumbled and fell, her body convulsing in spasms. I couldn't see what was happening to her, but I could hear the sickening sound of flesh tearing and bones snapping. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the stream went dark. I sat there, my heart racing, as I tried to process what I had just seen. I don't know how long I sat there, alone in my darkened room, but eventually, I mustered up the courage to click on the chat window again. This time, there were messages. Hundreds of them, all with the same 3 words, "Did you see?" I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. I had seen, and I couldn't unsee it. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized what I had stumbled upon, a snuff film, broadcast live on the dark web. I knew I should report it, but who would believe me? I was just a random viewer, stumbling upon something I wasn't meant to see. I couldn't prove anything, and I knew that if I spoke up, I would only draw attention to myself. I decided to do some digging, to see if I could find out more about the woman in the sundress. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon a news article about a local woman who had gone missing. Her description matched the woman in the video, and I felt a twinge of horror as I realized that I had witnessed her final moments. I knew I had to do something, to bring her killer to justice. But how? I was just one person, up against a vast and shadowy network of criminals. I decided to do what I did best, gather information. I spent hours online, researching everything I could find about the dark web and its inhabitants. I learned about the different forums and marketplaces, and I began to piece together a picture of the world I had stumbled upon. And then, one day, I found it, a forum dedicated to the woman in the sundress. There were messages from people claiming to have seen her, to have been there when it happened. And there were pictures, gruesome and brutal, that left no doubt in my mind about what had happened to her. But there was something else, something that caught my eye. One of the users had posted a link to another live stream, with a promise that it would be even more exciting than the last. I hesitated, unsure if I could bear to watch another snuff film. But then I remembered the woman in the sundress, and I knew that I had to do something. I had to try to stop this from happening again. I clicked on the link, and my screen was filled with darkness. And then, slowly, a figure began to emerge from the shadows. It was a man, dressed in a dark suit and tie. He was holding a knife, and there was a cold, calculating look in his eyes. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the stream went dark again. I sat there, my heart racing, as I waited for it to come back on. But it didn't. Instead, I heard the sound of sirens, growing louder and louder. I realized, with a start, that the police must have traced the stream back to its source. I felt a surge of relief, knowing that the man in the dark suit would be caught and brought to justice. But I also felt a twinge of guilt, knowing that I had been a part of this, even if only as a viewer. I closed the Tor browser, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I knew that I would never be able to forget what I had seen, but I was glad that I had done something to stop it from happening again. I went to bed that night, my mind filled with images from the dark web. I knew that I would never be able to erase them, but I also knew that I had done the right thing. And as I drifted off to sleep, I made a promise to myself: I would never return to the dark web again. I delved too deeply, my curiosity ensnared by the whispers that echoed through its shadowy corridors. Days turned into nights as I navigated the twisted pathways, seeking thrills that lay beyond the pale. One fateful evening, I stumbled upon a forbidden forum, its threads pulsating with macabre imagery and tantalizing promises of unimaginable horrors. Intrigued and reckless, I clicked on a link, and the veil of my world was torn asunder. Before my horrified eyes, a gruesome video unfolded, its pixels stained with the crimson of 1,000 lives. The victims, helpless and screaming, were subjected to unimaginable torment, their flesh torn and their bones shattered. As the screen flickered with gore, a voice whispered taunts in my ear. "You are one of us now, child," it hissed. "You have witnessed the true nature of humanity." Overwhelmed by a mix of revulsion and morbid fascination, I spiraled down a path of self-destruction. I spent countless hours obsessively watching similar videos, my sanity crumbling with each passing clip. The images became etched into my mind, haunting my waking moments and tormenting my dreams. Night after night, the whispers grew louder, urging me to join the ranks of the unseen observers who reveled in the suffering of others. They offered me a twisted sense of power and belonging, tempting me with promises of forbidden knowledge and the ability to control the lives of others. Driven by a perverse desire to prove my worth, I began engaging in online conversations with the depraved denizens of the dark web. I traded gruesome images, shared twisted theories, and reveled in the sick world they inhabited. With each interaction, I felt myself sinking deeper into a realm of unspeakable darkness. But my reckless pursuit of forbidden knowledge came at a price. My once ordinary life was shattered. Friends and family grew distant, their faces etched with concern as they witnessed my transformation. I lost my job, my home, and any semblance of a normal existence. As my grip on reality loosened, I became a prisoner of my own morbid obsessions. The horrors I had witnessed online manifested in my waking hours, turning my world into a kaleidoscope of suffering. Shadows morphed into menacing figures, whispers echoed accusingly, and paranoia consumed my every thought. One night, as I lay paralyzed on the floor of my squalid apartment, the whispers intensified. They promised me a way out of my misery, a chance to inflict the same pain I had endured upon others. Guided by their insidious voices, I stumbled out into the darkness. I roamed the desolate streets like a predatory shadow, searching for the perfect victim. As luck would have it, a vulnerable wanderer crossed my path. In a moment of twisted desperation, I seized him, dragging him into a secluded alleyway. With trembling hands, I raised a knife that I had concealed beneath my jacket. The blade glistened in the dim moonlight, promising a swift and bloody end. But as I lowered it towards my victim's throat, a flicker of doubt seized me. In that brief moment of hesitation, the true horror of my actions washed over me. The faces of my victims, their agonized screams, flashed before my eyes. The whispers that had once seduced me now howled with anguish, their promises nothing but empty air. With a surge of remorse and determination, I cast the knife aside and stumbled away into the darkness. As I fled from the scene of my intended crime, I vowed to never return to the depths of the dark web that had consumed my life. The road to redemption was long and arduous. I sought therapy, piecing together the shattered fragments of my psyche. I apologized to those I had wronged, begging for their forgiveness. And slowly, with time and perseverance, I began to rebuild my life. The scars of my past remain, etched deep into my soul. But I have found a new purpose, dedicating my life to guiding others away from the treacherous path that I once tread. I speak to students, community groups, and anyone willing to listen, sharing my story as a cautionary tale against the allure of the dark web. For in the labyrinthine depths of the unseen, where horrors lurk and whispers deceive, even the most curious soul can succumb to the darkness. And the price of redemption can be paid with a lifetime of regret. I should have known better. I should have listened to the warnings and stayed away from the dark web. But there was something about the anonymity and lawlessness of the place that called to me, and I couldn't resist the temptation to explore its hidden depths. It was during one of my late-night sessions, my eyes bleary from staring at the computer screen, that I stumbled upon it. A simple link, hidden among the countless other links that populated the site I was visiting. It was just a blank red square, but something about it made my heart race. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the enter key. But in the end, my curiosity won out. The page that loaded was even more unsettling than the link had been. It was a simple room, but everything was bathed in a deep red light that made it feel almost otherworldly. The walls were lined with what appeared to be torture devices, and in the center of the room was a large metal table, stained with dried blood. I tried to leave the site, to close the tab and forget about the red room. But something held me there, some unseen force that kept me glued to my seat. And that's when I saw it. A figure, shrouded in shadows, walking into the room. At first I thought it was just a video, some sick and twisted form of entertainment. But as the figure came closer, I realized that it was real. I could see the sweat beading on its brow, the fear in its eyes. And then I saw the tools, the knives and saws and pliers, and I knew that this was no act. I watched in horror as the figure was tied down to the table, its screams echoing through my headphones. I don't know how long I watched, how many terrible things I saw. But eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I closed the tab, ripped off my headphones, and stumbled away from my computer. I tried to tell myself that it was just a trick, that it wasn't real. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had seen true hell, and it had been in that red room on the dark web. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind filled with images of the things I had seen. I tried to block them out, to push them to the back of my mind. But they were always there, just below the surface, waiting to flood back in at the slightest provocation. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to move on with my life. I avoided the dark web, deleting my browser history and blocking any sites that even hinted at its existence. I told myself that I was safe, that I had escaped the clutches of that terrible place. But I was wrong. One night, as I was browsing the internet, a chat window popped up on my screen. I didn't recognize the username, but something about it sent a chill down my spine. I tried to close the window, to ignore the message, but it was too late. "I know what you saw," the message read. "And now I'm coming for you." I knew it was impossible, that there was no way they could know who I was. But the fear was real, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, waiting for their chance to strike. I tried to carry on with my life, but every shadow seemed to move, every creak of a floorboard made me jump. I was paranoid, always looking over my shoulder, never truly at peace. And then, one night, I received another message. This one was different, more urgent. "Meet me in the red room," it read. "I have a way to make it all stop." I knew I shouldn't go, that it was a trap. But I was desperate, willing to do anything to make the fear and the memories go away. I opened the link, my heart racing as the red room loaded on my screen. But when I saw what was waiting for me, I knew that I had made a terrible mistake. The figure from before was there, but this time, it was me. My body, tied down to that same metal table, my screams echoing through the room. And behind me, a figure in shadows, holding the same tools that I had seen before. I tried to close the tab to escape, but I couldn't. I was trapped, forced to watch as my own body was mutilated and destroyed. I screamed, I cried, I begged for it to stop. But it didn't. It just went on, until there was nothing left. And then, the screen went black. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the blank screen, my body shaking with sobs. But eventually, I summoned the strength to get up, to turn off my computer, to walk away from that terrible place. I haven't been back to the dark web since, and I don't plan to. I've learned my lesson, and I know now that some things are better left unseen. The red room was a glimpse into true hell, a place of nightmares and despair. And I never want to go back there again. I still have nightmares, of course, but they're getting better. I'm moving on, putting the past behind me. But I'll never forget that red room, and the terrible things that I saw there. It will always be with me, a dark corner of my mind, a reminder of the dangers of curiosity and the power of fear. My fingers fumbled with the mouse, a cold sweat clinging to my palms. The image on the screen, a crudely drawn skull with a message written in jagged, red letters, was enough to send shivers down my spine. They know, it read. I felt a sudden urge to smash the screen, to erase the evidence of my folly, but the words remained etched into my memory. My breath itched, my heart hammering in my chest. This wasn't some harmless prank. This was real. I was in danger. The memory of that fateful night, a mere 2 weeks ago, was a blur of reckless abandon and misplaced trust. The promise of escape, of oblivion, had lured me down the rabbit hole of the dark web, a digital underworld where anonymity reigned supreme. I had stumbled upon a shadowy marketplace, a haven for illicit goods, a place where anything could be bought, anything could be sold. My initial hesitation, the gnawing apprehension that had whispered of danger, had been quickly drowned by the allure of the forbidden. The desire to escape, to numb the pain of my recent breakup with Sarah, had been too great. I had convinced myself it was just one time, a fleeting indulgence, a temporary reprieve from the relentless ache in my heart. I had purchased a small quantity of MDMA, the promise of euphoria blinding me to the potential consequences. The transaction had been a whirlwind of encrypted messages, Bitcoin transfers, and an almost comical level of paranoia. The package had arrived days later, tucked away in a nondescript cardboard box, a silent testament to my reckless decision. The first hit had been exhilarating, a kaleidoscope of colors and emotions, a temporary escape from the relentless reality of my life. But the euphoria had faded, leaving behind a hollow ache and a gnawing sense of unease. The afterglow had been tinged with a lingering fear, a fear that had only intensified over the last few days. I had started seeing things, shadows moving at the edge of my vision, whispers in the silence, a constant feeling of being watched. The once familiar world had transformed into a place of paranoia and suspicion. I had become a prisoner in my own home, haunted by the fear that someone was coming for me. Now, staring at the chilling message on my screen, I knew my worst fears had been realized. They knew. They knew I had bought from them, and they were coming. Panic welled up within me. I needed to get out, to disappear. But where could I go? I couldn't trust anyone, not anymore. My phone, the only lifeline I had left, was useless. It was a tracking device, a beacon that would lead them straight to me. With trembling hands I switched my phone off, the silence that followed deafening. My mind raced, desperately searching for a solution. My apartment felt like a cage, every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind outside, sounding like the footsteps of my pursuers. I packed a small bag, stuffing in essentials, a change of clothes, a toothbrush, some cash. Then, driven by a primal instinct for survival, I did the one thing I knew I had to do. I fled. I took the stairs, avoiding the elevator for fear of being monitored, my heart pounding against my ribs. As I stepped out onto the street, my eyes scanned the crowd, searching for any sign of danger. Every face seemed suspicious, every shadow a potential threat. I ran, not knowing where I was going, just running. My lungs burned, my legs screamed for mercy, but I pushed on, fueled by a desperate hope for survival. I ran until my body could no longer bear the strain, collapsing onto a park bench, gasping for breath. The park was deserted, shrouded in the cloak of twilight. I sat there, hunched, unable to think clearly. Every nerve in my body was on high alert, every sound a potential alarm. I was a hunted animal, cornered and desperate. My mind drifted back to the message, the crudely drawn skull, a symbol of death, a harbinger of doom. Their world, the dark web, was a place where anonymity was a shield, a place where the rules of society did not apply. It was a world of shadows and secrets, where the lines between right and wrong were blurred, and the consequences of your actions could be dire. I had crossed that line, and now I was paying the price. As darkness descended, I realized I was alone. I had no one to turn to, no one to trust. The world I knew, the world of family, friends, and normalcy, had vanished. I was adrift in a sea of paranoia and fear, a fugitive in my own city. Suddenly, a flash of headlights illuminated the park, a car pulling up to the curb. My heart skipped a beat. Was it them? Had they found me? The car door slammed shut, and a figure emerged from the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. It was Sarah, her face etched with worry and concern. "Liam, what's going on?" she asked, her voice tinged with a hint of accusation. I stared at her, speechless, my mind a jumbled mess of fear and relief. "Liam, why are you here?" she pressed, her eyes searching mine. I need to tell you something," I stammered, my voice shaky. "Something important." She sat down beside me, her hand resting on mine, her touch a momentary anchor in the storm raging within me. "I made a mistake, Sarah," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I did something stupid." "What are you talking about?" The words tumbled out of me, a torrent of confession, the truth spilling out like a dam bursting. I told her about the dark web, about the drugs, about the fear, about the message. As I spoke, a wave of relief washed over me. I had told someone finally. The burden of my secret, the weight of my fear, had lessened. Sarah listened patiently, her face a mix of concern and disbelief. When I had finished, she looked at me, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of anger and sadness. "Liam, why? Why did you do this?" "I was hurting, Sarah," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I was lost. I didn't know what I was doing." "But you knew it was wrong," she said, her voice sharp. "You knew you were putting yourself in danger." Her words were like a slap in the face, but I knew she was right. I had been reckless, irresponsible, and now I was paying the price. "I know," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry. I'm scared, Sarah. I don't know what to do." She took my hand, her touch a source of comfort in the darkness. "It's okay, Liam," she said. "We'll figure this out together. We'll make this right." Her words, laced with a hint of uncertainty, were a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. I clung to them, to the hope that she was right, that we could find a way out of this mess. The silence returned, heavy with unspoken fears and anxieties. "We need to go," she said finally, her voice resolute. "We need to get out of here, now." And so, we left the park, walking hand in hand into the darkness, two shadows escaping the clutches of a hidden danger. My phone was still switched off, my only connection to the outside world the presence of Sarah by my side. We walked for what seemed like hours, the city lights blurring past us, the night air cold and damp against our skin. We reached a small motel, a faded sign promising rest and comfort. Sarah checked us in, using a fake name and cash. We were living in a world of shadows, a world where every step was a calculated risk. The motel room was cramped and dingy, but it offered a semblance of safety, a temporary haven from the storm raging outside. As we settled in, a wave of exhaustion washed over me, the tension of the past few days finally catching up with me. Sarah sat beside me, her presence a calming influence in the storm of my fear. She didn't say anything, but her hand rested on mine, a silent promise of support and reassurance. I closed my eyes, the events of the past few days swirling in my mind. The fear was still there, a constant presence, but now it was tempered by a flicker of hope, a conviction that together, we could face whatever came our way. The dark web, that sinister marketplace of shadows and secrets, had ensnared me in its web of deceit and danger. But now I knew I was not alone. Sarah was with me, her love and support a beacon in the darkness, a reminder that even in the depths of despair, there was a glimmer of light. We had a long, perilous journey ahead of us, but together, we would face it. We would find a way out, a path to redemption, a chance for a new beginning. For now, we would cling to the fragile hope that we had found sanctuary, a momentary respite from the fear that stalked our every move. The light of dawn broke through the cracks in the window curtains, painting the motel room in a pale, ethereal glow. I opened my eyes, the fear still lurking beneath the surface, but it was less intense now, softened by the presence of Sarah beside me. She was still asleep, her face relaxed, her breathing soft and even. I watched her for a few moments, my heart filled with a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. She was an anchor in my storm, a beacon in my darkness. I knew we had a long road ahead of us, a road fraught with danger and uncertainty. But as I looked at Sarah, sleeping peacefully beside me, I felt a flicker of hope, a belief that we could face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. The dark web had tried to swallow me whole, but Sarah had pulled me back from the brink. She had given me a second chance. And I would not waste it. I would find a way out, a way to make amends for my mistakes, a way to earn back the trust one had so carelessly thrown away. The journey to redemption would be long and arduous, but I knew I was not alone. I had Sarah, and that was all that mattered. The dark web might have ensnared me, but it could not break the bond we shared. And that, I knew, was the truth that would see us through. The forum I had stumbled upon was called The Last Resort. It was a digital haven for the desperate, the forsaken, those who had nowhere else to turn. The threads were filled with cryptic messages, whispered pleas for help, and chilling accounts of cures and treatments that defied the boundaries of known science. I hovered over a thread titled A Different Kind of Doctor, my fingers trembling as I clicked on it. The first post was an image, a grainy, low-resolution photograph of a man shrouded in darkness, his face obscured by shadow. His eyes, however, burned with an unnatural intensity, reflecting the flickering light of a nearby computer screen. The caption, typed in a language that resembled a corrupted script, read, "He heals what others cannot." Below it, an intricate network of comments, both praising and warning, unfolded. Some spoke of miraculous cures, of ailments eradicated by the doctor's touch. Others whispered of gruesome side effects, of horrifying rituals and sacrifices that accompanied the healing. Fear gnawed at my insides, but the desperation fueled by my illness pushed me forward. I needed to contact this doctor. After days of deciphering cryptic messages and navigating labyrinthine web pages, I finally found the contact. A single email address, a digital gateway to the unknown. I typed my plea, a desperate cry for help, and hit send. The wait was agonizing. Days turned into nights, and nights into weeks. I was consumed by the fear and anticipation, my body a hollow shell of its former self. Then, one morning, a reply arrived in my inbox. It was short, curt, and devoid of any warmth. "Come," it read. "The address will be provided." The email included a file, a digital map leading to a secluded, dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The map was a twisted maze of winding alleyways and forgotten roads, each turn a step closer to the unknown. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the backdrop of my own fear and anticipation. The warehouse was a crumbling monument to the city's forgotten past, its windows boarded up, its paint peeling like scabs. The only light came from a solitary, flickering bulb hanging above the heavy metal door. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the rusted handle. My mind screamed at me to turn back, but the desperation fueled by my illness drove me forward. My fingers trembled as I turned the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a cavernous space filled with an oppressive silence. The air was thick with the musty smell of decay and something else, something metallic and tangy, like blood. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. The space was dimly lit, illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights that cast long, grotesque shadows on the walls. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the pale light. Scattered around the warehouse were tools and equipment, their purpose unclear, their presence unsettling. The air was thick with the smell of chemicals and something else, something metallic and sweet, that made my stomach churn. I was not alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, his silhouette elongated and distorted by the flickering lights. He was tall, gaunt, and clad in a stained white coat that seemed to cling to him like a shroud. His face was hidden in the darkness, obscured by the shadows. "You have come," the figure said, his voice raspy and dry, like sandpaper against bone. My throat tightened, and I swallowed hard. "I have," I whispered, my voice small and shaky. He stepped closer, his eyes, two glowing embers in the darkness, boring into mine. He was not human. A cold, primal instinct, a sense of ancient, unbridled power, emanated from him. "I can heal you," he said, his voice a low, guttural rumble that sent shivers down my spine. "But it will come at a price." He gestured to a table in the center of the warehouse. On it lay a collection of surgical instruments, their gleaming metal reflecting the flickering light. Beside them lay a scalpel, its blade gleaming with an eerie sharpness. It was then I realized what he meant by price. He was a surgeon of a different kind, a practitioner of an ancient, forbidden art. I had stumbled upon a world where the line between healing and horror was blurred, where the cure resided in the darkest corners of human imagination. My mind screamed at me to flee, to run, to escape this nightmare. But my body, consumed by the relentless hunger of the disease, seemed to yearn for the promise of his touch. I nodded, resigned to my fate. He led me to the table, his eyes never leaving mine, their intensity magnifying my dread. He lifted my chin, forcing me to look at him. He held the scalpel, its blade glinting under the fluorescent light, and stared at me, his expression unreadable. "Your body is a vessel," he said, his voice a chilling whisper. "A vessel filled with darkness." He made a small incision on my arm, the blade severing flesh with a sickening squelch. Blood welled up, staining the table a crimson red. He didn't flinch, didn't show any sign of disgust, only an unsettling calm. "We must cleanse it," he said. "Purge the darkness." And then, the real horror began. He used his scalpel not to stitch, but to carve. He gouged and cut, his movements precise, efficient, devoid of any emotion. He removed my organs, one by one, replacing them with what seemed to be grotesque, pulsating substitutes. They were strange, alien things, their surface covered in a shimmering, iridescent film that pulsed with a sickly luminescence. I screamed, a raw, primal cry that echoed through the warehouse. But I was trapped, bound to the table by a strange, unseen force. I couldn't escape, couldn't fight, couldn't stop the horrifying transformation that was unfolding before my eyes. As he worked, the doctor spoke, his voice a low, hypnotic rumble. He spoke of ancient rituals, of forgotten gods, of a world where the boundary between life and death was blurred, a world where the flesh was a vessel for something far more sinister. He spoke of the darkness that resided within me, the darkness that had brought me to him. He spoke of the price I had paid, the price I would continue to pay. He spoke of a new world, a world where I would be reborn, a world where I would be something different. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ordeal was over. I lay on the table, my body a grotesque mockery of its former self, a patchwork of flesh and alien flesh, connected by a network of glowing veins. The doctor stood over me, his face hidden in the shadows, his eyes burning with a chilling intensity. "You are healed," he said. "But you are not human anymore." He extended his hand, his fingers long and thin like the talons of a bird of prey. He touched my forehead, his touch cold and alien, and I felt something shift within me. A wave of power, a surge of something dark and ancient, flowed through my veins. I was no longer human. I was something else. I looked at him, his face still obscured by the shadows. He smiled, a sinister, unsettling smile that stretched his lips wide, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Welcome to your new reality," he whispered. "Welcome to the darkness." The world outside the warehouse felt different now. I could sense the whispers of the shadows, the murmurs of the forgotten gods. The city, once familiar and comforting, now felt alien and hostile. The air was heavy with the stench of decay, the scent of something dark and ancient. I was a monster, a creature of the night, a being reborn in the darkness. I was a testament to the doctor's work, a walking nightmare, a living embodiment of the horrors that lurked beneath the surface of our world. My journey into the dark web had led me to a place I never could have imagined, a place where the line between healing and horror was blurred, where the doctor was a demon, and the cure, a curse. I had been healed, but at what cost? And as the first rays of dawn illuminated the horizon, I knew that my life would never be the same. The darkness had claimed me. And it would never let me go.